Right, we are live. Hi everyone, I'm very excited to host Tadeh Hakopian. He's the program manager at Energy Vault. I got to know Tadeh on AC Tech Hackathon last year where he gave like amazing workshop, and I have been following his public presentations. One thing I really find very interesting about Tadeh, he shares all the presentation on GitHub and a lot of like dynamo code. So it's thanks a lot for making your work open source and sharing it with the community.
My
Glad to have you
pleasure.
on the show.
My pleasure.
So,
Yeah.
so Tadeh, can you give us an highlights of your career till date? Like,
Yeah. Starting from a while ago, I graduated with a background in architecture, 2012, a 5-year degree from Cal Poly Pomona. So from there, in Pomona, I learned a lot about, design, of course, but also renewable design, sustainable design, and the metrics that goes into it, because you always have to back up your information with data, your designs with data. So that got me more into BIM, and that was Revit, and I was learning Revit back in like 2009. So between like kind of the design logic and getting information, and also just working quickly, I found Revit and BIM to be useful. So from there, I started working at different companies that take use of those skills. Started my internship in HNTV in 2011. That's where I worked on the 49ers football stadium. That's now the Levi Stadium. That was a big old project with lots of cool stuff in there. That was like kind of where I learned how to do BIM the right way with Gotham Shinomi, who was my manager, BIM manager at that point. He showed me all the right ways to do things, and that kind of embedded my brain with the correct direction. And from there, like, I just took that kind of like, how can we use data and information into the modeling and design process the entire time. I worked for some other architecture companies working on towers and commercial projects and community projects and all that. I spent over a year at Stantec, which I learned a lot about the renewable and sustainable design for MEP systems, specifically those mechanical engineering, plumbing, Revit model, this is like 7-8 years ago before people were really doing that. So it was a really great experience. That was with another BIM manager, Natalia Locke. Learned a lot from her when it came to standard organization. Moved on from there eventually to a contractor this time, not a design engineer, architect, contractor, Panko Builders. I worked with the virtual design and construction team, the VDC team, to include BIM, data, operations, equipment, into building, healthcare buildings, high rises, and all sorts of cool theme projects and entertainment projects. They did a little bit of everything. So I really learned not just why you design something a certain way, but how you operate and get it built and how to validate it and make it real. That was a nice kind of like really structured approach. We learned a lot about lean management at Panko. So that was a nice highlight, because I would recommend to anybody who's interested in this field, try to find a way to connect yourself with the actual field equipment, actual like installations of and construction operations of any project. This will be, regardless of your designer, and whatever, it is very eye-opening, both in how it's done with equipment, digital equipment like laser scanners and drones, but also what you need to do to make that succeed, and a long-term kind of like, how do you get that thing built? So that was a big eye-opener. From there, I went to HKS Architects, and HKS, it does big projects, very, very big projects. Like, 1 million to 3 million square feet is a pretty normal project for HKS. And I led the entire team on the BIM scope. At that point, I was the manager for campus projects, skyscrapers, other complexes, all sorts of different projects over about 3 years. And that was a great way of like saying, how can we take all the lessons learned and make it comprehensive? That's where more information about digital twins and facility management and all that kind of came to play. Owners were more interested in that. And from there, I joined HMC to be a company-wide enterprise level support for all things cloud and BIM 360 and how we can use data and operations to our advantage at HMC. That was with Nash Reyes, who's leading the group, along with Evan Troxel. They were kind of like the workhorses that pulled us all along. So a big shout out to them for bringing the team together and organizing a strategy. And that's something we'll talk about, a strategy, as I wasn't able to do anything until the strategy and direction was agreed upon by the company. So that's a big success. Is you can't just do it on your own. I know a lot of people in this field of design technology are always trying to make everything happen themselves, which is a great attitude. but you do need to like get buy-in. And that's something I had to learn over the years is buy-in. I learned a lot more at HMC. Currently, very recently, I joined a startup in the renewable energy sector called Energy Vault. I'm the program manager there. I work on all things related to getting the design concept into a design coordination document that would include virtual design construction, VDC, the building information model, BIM, but also the longer tail of digital twins and how we can use data for a life cycle project and all aspects of a design for a, is really, it's kind of fun. It's a skyscraper sized gravity energy system. So if you want to know more about that, we could talk, but that's currently where I am. And you can see the scope of a design technology professional of any background is kind of growing into everything. So that's my current role. Those are big projects, very tall, 500 feet tall, each one of them. So that's kind of where we are now. Before I've done those, hopefully I didn't take too much time talking about my recap there. I can always do a deep dive in each of these, but yeah, big themes are data, operations, buy-in, and big projects, because the bigger projects usually get that kind of support behind them. So don't be discouraged if you feel like you're hitting walls there. People really want design technology services comprehensively, whether you do parametric design, BIM, VDC, whatever. It is a really important growing part of the built environment operations.
I see. Yeah, that's quite exciting. And I'm curious to know, like, what got you into coding and what were the hurdles you faced during this journey?
Yeah, coding was interesting because I didn't really have an way of using coding to my advantage for years. I didn't know how to, like, I wanted to learn, but this is going back to say 2011, 2012. I was like, back then it was like, yeah, it's either you learn C# or that was kind of it. And I didn't even know where to begin. So it was kind of off to the side for a while. And I was just using everything native out of the box for Revit and applications people built. But I started to learn more about the possibility of what you can do, not just coding with data. And from everybody told me, it's like, well, if you want to use data of any kind, there's ways of doing that, but your friend's going to be Python. So I learned about them. Okay, let me see, how can I possibly use Python to my advantage in this case? And that's where Dynamo came into play. This is around 2016, 17, I started getting interested in it. And I was like, okay, well, there's better documentation out there for the community around Dynamo and Revit. So I started learning about the very basics of Dynamo to help me just automate a few things in Revit, make my own little apps and tools that I didn't have to be an expert to make. I learned that. I learned, like, back then, I didn't know what a string was. I didn't know what an integer was. I had no idea what these terms meant. I didn't know how to concatenate anything. And I slowly but surely learned it around 2017. I started learning it, and I realized between just the visual scripting in Dynamo and then the Python node that you can use in Dynamo, you can take it really far. And that's when I opened my eyes to the world of coding. This Python, visual, if you know Revit, Dynamo's not that bad to get into. It's pretty straightforward once you get used to the jargon and the operations. And then once you know Dynamo, you can start taking advantage of Python, which itself is not that hard to learn, to be honest. Compared to other coding languages, it's probably the easiest. Then I'm like, okay, I think I need to start using this more and more and more, because I started realizing once you learn this stuff, you can really extrapolate from it, do 100 different things with it. So that was 2017. I started 2018. I really tried to do my best with Python in Dynamo. I did some stuff there, did some basic coding. And 2019, I actually presented a class at this university for how to use Python and Dynamo. It was an intermediate level. It assumed you already knew Dynamo and Python, but if you knew enough of it, you could use this instructions. That's how far I got at that 2019 point. And then starting in 2020, when I joined HMC, I wanted to get more into web technology because I realized everything was moving to the web. So like everything is web this, web that. Pretty much every tool we use, I can't think of too many exceptions, is connected. Even Revit with 360 is connected to web. So I thought, okay, web's the future, but Python can't facilitate the whole picture. So I learned a little bit of JavaScript little by little, taught myself as much as I could. And then I realized Forge has, the solution that Autodesk has for web services, web apps, is part of that ecosystem with JavaScript, PHP as a different coding language, C# as a different coding language. It's very agnostic to your language, and it will support them. You just have to know the API, the application programming interface with Forge, and you could take the kind of features you see out of the box with 360 and use that to your advantage to create your own custom solutions, not unlike what you're doing with Dynamo. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk to the Forge team. Let's learn some JavaScript. Let's talk to the Forge team. I did some workshops, accelerators, hackathons with them. I started learning more and more how about this work. Great team with Forge. And then that's when I started making some very, very basic apps. I got a lot of help from the Forge team to help me make that, but you want to make a proof of concept, because anybody in our world knows in design technology, you know there's a lot of solutions, but people have no idea what you're talking about. We talk about your project manager, designers, like this sounds cool. They have no idea what it looks like, so you have to show some kind of proof of concept. So I did some of those proof of concepts with web apps to help us, all that strategy agency design technology team developed, in order to take something that, at this point was kind of like structured within the services out of the box from the corporate, bundle software we get from Autodesk and other suppliers and vendors, to something we can control ourselves and make it more aligned. So if web is the future, customized workflows is a part of that, because you can only get so much out of the licenses you purchase, and everything started to be more like, okay, here's a kit of parts, here's some common stuff. We'll help you go ahead and build something. And that's what Autodesk did with Forge, and that's something I was pursuing as well. So that's been my coding journey. I went from like, that'd be kind of cool, but I didn't know what to do, to, okay, I think somebody's telling me Python's the way for data, to, okay, let's try Dynamo. Okay, now let's try Python. Okay, I'm getting the hang of this, but it looks like we need web. Let's try some JavaScript. Okay, let's see what we can do with Forge. So it was a learning journey. I went back, like, at this point almost 5 years ago, and I'm always learning more. It's an interesting field, and I highly recommend anybody who's just even curious dive in. The learning resources are amazing these days. So that was my experience. I went from having nothing to like at least having some cursory understanding, so I could work with the code at this point, and I want to develop that more, so I can keep prototyping and showing proven concepts as we get more sophisticated in our workflows.
That's amazing. Like I really resonate with that, like customizing workflows, integrating various libraries, components, and like modifying for your own use case, like it's very crucial. And can you share some use cases of data in BIM architecture? Like how, what do you mean by data analytics for BIM? Like what are the things we can achieve?
The way I see it is there's use cases just depend on what you want to achieve as either an individual, a team, a project, a company, what have you. So it's kind of like the use cases are everywhere, but it's being able to kind of like articulate that, because we can all kind of imagine what that looks like. So that could be just depends on your operations. And the BIM model is just, I keep saying that we leave money on the table with those models. Where, let's say, like for Revit, that's a pretty common BIM format, but you also have IFC and all that stuff. So there's lots of different formats, right? But just any BIM model like Revit would have just a ton of data in it. Like you have every single piece of your building. How many walls do you have in there? How many doors? What type of doors? How much glazing do you have in there? What is the overall area of a given floor plate, rooms, finished floors, on and on. It's all there. So wouldn't it be great if we could somehow extract that and compare and say, okay, like, for example, let's say you want to focus on just the narrow scope of a given project. Right now, Revit will give you a schedule and say, okay, here's where all your stuff is, all the floors and doors and walls and what have you. But you have to build that per schedule, which is a little unfortunate, because it is a little time consuming to build that. So you have to finagle a little bit, but all the information is built into the model. It's just, that's Revit's best way of it's its best attempt in trying to get some kind of breakdown. It's like, okay, couldn't you just find a way to connect that, say, from Revit to some database, and use the database to make some flexible schedules of, like, or not schedule, the diagrams and charts and breakdowns, and spit that out into some spreadsheet, that kind of thing. So it's the kind of thing that's like the model has all this great information, but it's so hard to kind of like access it, because BIM software these days are built around documentation 20 years ago, and data was kind of like a nice thing if you knew how to use it, but it wasn't kind of optimized, so it was kind of hidden in there. We knew it was there. So you can get quantities of volumes and counts. You can multiply that by cost per whatever linear foot of content. So it's all there. So one way is like, how can we take all this data that we already modeled in there? It's all there. We modeled it. It's unless you're being dishonest, it should be accurate. So if you have the correct model information, you take care of every project, you can actually extract every relevant piece of information at the very base level, get quantities. So you don't have to find a different way of extracting quantities. Quantities just kind of pop up as like mass volumes of and areas and links and whatever objects. So that's an easy win right there. We don't have to start doing this like forensic investigation of the model right now. People have to like study each and every piece. What if I just gave you a tabular database, spit out the BIM model, and it gave you all the counts, and you just put it you plug it into a spreadsheet, you plug that into a dashboard. That's one really nice, convenient way that we can say, okay, because the architecture model has such a quantity of everything. Let's say the contractor has their own model based on the plans, and you compare and say, okay, there's a little bit of a difference, instead of just kind of saying like I measured off a PDF or something. That's what's one easy, very easy project-specific way of getting data that I think a lot of people want. There's solutions for that, like Autodesk Assemble does something like that, but I think that you can easily do that with just data in the model. More global, let's say I have 100 projects. At HMC, we had like 300 BIM models in our cloud, so Forge was nice in that regard. So I was like, could I pull information historically from every model I worked on and compare trends of like, how big are the given exam rooms for my healthcare buildings, and compare that across 100 projects. Maybe that'll give me some insight about how we're designing these things, and I can come back to the client saying, okay, optimize the solution here based on 100 projects for exam room of similar type is, I don't know, 400 square feet. Any more than that, we run into some coordination issues. Any smaller than that, we may not have room for equipment. So we compare a trend over time based on project work we've completed, assuming, again, the models need to be in a decent enough format that we don't junk in there. So you have to be careful how you do that first, but assuming it's all ready to go, we did a good job as designers, it's there. You can compare the historical data in a broad set, whether that's a room floor plan, the gross square footage of a project, and you can also take it from there to get data on environmental analysis calculations. So these are the kind of things like, what is it that people want your company to succeed? And that could be user data. Maybe we want to know how efficient people are operating the software, how often they're how often are they in Revit, for how long, are they idling, do they need help? Not to try to track their motion, but just to see if this solution, say Revit or Navisworks or whatever we're tracking, is a useful solution. Are they needing help here and there? What's the software we're trying to track globally? So we know that we need more of this kind of software at a certain time by licenses. That's a nice, corporate executive accounting of it. So beyond just project work, how do we support the team? These are all data use cases that you think, okay, what is the problems we have? We have a problem. And then you think, okay, what would be a great way to solve that based on what we have? And then you start connecting dots. My problem, how many licenses of Revit do I have to buy? Well, I'm not really sure. I'm in the dark here. So let's find a way to connect that license usage information, whatever we have, to some kind of database. And from there, we can provide actual analytical information to somebody who's trying to, set a budget accounting for next year. Or, we're trying to get some good analytical models for studying environmental analysis. Do we rebuild every model ourselves, or is there something from the existing set of models we have in BIM that can provide information about that, and how can we extract that and quantify it? So it might be in two different places these things live, but you have to then start connecting the dots. So that's been the case. It's almost like, what is your business concern, or what is the operational efficiency you want to gain? What do you have to work with? And that could be, again, it could be a BIM model. It could be some spreadsheet somewhere else. Could be you need to get forms filled out from people as a survey response, and then you start building it from there. And over time, you discover what makes sense and where things are placed. So that's one way of developing use cases and studying that, is asking the people who are basically in charge and paying for things. That's a great way to start. Once you talk to people who are like, this is our budget, this is how we're going to set up the annual fiscal budget, that's a great way to say, oh, okay, can we target this? Can we reduce that? Or you talk to people in the operations division, say, what's your pains? What are you going through? What they say, like, we don't know, like, whatever, we're not sure how big our volume footprint is, or whatever like that, our area footprint is. Let's talk about that. Maybe I have something for you on our model side or something else. So communication is the key. That's what I'm saying. It could be just anything that works for your project. That's the beauty of it. And half the fun is actually just connecting the dots, and then you'd be surprised how much work can get done at that point.
Oh man, that's so insightful. Thanks for sharing. And I highly recommend everyone watching this or listening this, like, to check out Tadeh's Autodesk University session he did this year. It has amazing insight and deep dive into the web app he developed. So I think this is a great time we could show a demo of your web app.
Absolutely, yeah. So for anybody who missed it, this is a project I made. I'll share my screen right now so you can see it. For Autodesk University, this is after putting together some, this is after some trial and error. I think I started really diving into Forge mid 2020, and I did some courses and workshops and learned more and more. And by mid 2021, we had a series of kind of like accelerated programs with the Autodesk Forge team. Great team, very awesome group of people. And I said, hey, one of the concerns we have is, at HHMC at the time was we want to get more useful informational data for the models that on one hand, it's all in 360. That's the beauty of 360. Every single model you ever had and every version of that model is there. But it was hard to access. You had to jump around from one project to another. It doesn't let you do a universal dashboard. And I was like, oh, that's an unfortunate limitation of the software. Maybe they'll change in the future, but they're also very friendly to giving you developer tools to make that solution on your own. So it's like, okay, one question we had as a company is like, okay, what's in our models? Well, we had a lot of models. We were trying to get more information out of the models themselves. So it took a nice starting point on one hand where, let's say I want to give a project manager a very easy to read breakdown of the contents of the model, whether that's a BIM lead, project manager, architect, whatever it was. I want to make it easy so you don't get stressed out looking at this thing. It's very at a glance quick. So I worked with them as like, hey, can we do something here? And I talked about what we could do and say, okay, let's take the Forge viewer, which is the middle portion here. Forge viewer is 3D view of the project. If you have BIM model, you push it to your 360, here it is. And how can we also take this dashboard view based on my account and also load something every project. So this is every project I have right now. So I don't have to go jumping between them and logging out. So now I have a universal view of all my projects. I have a viewer of each project right now, clicking on one version of one model. And how can I get data out of that? And that was the breakdown on the right here. They describe the tabular data, or not tabular, but the chart data format. So it's easy to figure out, okay, what is the breakdown of different kinds of work sets, different kinds of materials. And we have these in different formats. It's a little wonky when it gets lots of data, but it gives you a sense of where it is. So let's say you want to know how much aluminum pieces you have at 3,778 aluminum pieces, mostly for the mullions. So it gives you a sense of what's in your model, copper, glass, whatsoever. So this is a proof of concept of like, okay, right now, navigating BIM 360 is a little weird. What if I just gave you an executive account to break it down? So here's the navigation. You go from your account to the project model, to the version. That's important because each version is a different model in your history of the project. So I got the latest version, click on that, then it loads whatever's in the model. And from there, you can navigate to see what you got in here, just through a generic Forge viewer. It's the same Forge view in BIM 360. They call it BIM 360 viewer, Forge viewer, same thing. And then from there, you know what you're looking at, and it'll also load automatically the breakdown in the chart information of the work sets and the material, both in a bar chart, vertical bar chart in for the work set, and a pie chart for the materials, and reversed, so that you can see a bar chart and pie chart in reverse for that. So this is something that a lot of this was built with out-of-the-box content, I should say, open source shared content from the Autodesk Forge team. They're like, hey guys, like, what can we do to start with this? Like, let's try this. I'm like, okay, can you help me with this? Where would I put that? And then we work together to make it work. So the vast majority of this is just kind of like modified code that we worked on together to get these results. And there's a little bit of configuration set up. You have to make sure you have a Forge account separate from your other accounts. You have to create an app within your Forge environment that then links to your 360 account. Otherwise, it has no database. So you have to authorize that on your 360. And then you have to host it on something. Right now, as you can tell, it's hosted on Heroku. So you can pick anything, Azure. It can be hosted on Azure, AWS. GitHub has a hosting service. These are free. Anything more than just kind of like a prototype, you may want something more robust. But the cool thing of it is, this is nice for everything. Everything you're seeing right now is not an included cost. You already paid for your BIM 360 subscription, so this is all just part of it. You're just visualizing it a different way. So I'm not doing anything that costs extra. So this is all just, extra stuff I can see without paying more for it. They charge you certain amounts for like additional operations that cost a lot of like server time, but this is not the case. This is actually just a review of all your BIM 360 content as you have it in a different format, and then you get natively out of BIM 360. So that was the app we have in that I built for the AU class that is currently online. I posted the link to this chat. So That's available for everybody. It has the whole shebang in there, and it has my whole breakdown of how we did that. But this is all started from data strategy, like how can we get more data from our project information, and this is one way of doing it, and make it easy, non-intimidating, at a glance, not too much work. It's all one page. You don't have to jump around different tabs. So that's the concept here.
Yeah, and I must say, like the analytics and visualization is so important. Like just the glimpse of this first page itself, I can have like some intuition about the comparative analysis of material compared to like going to the model, browsing it, and like finding. So like this data viz apps are so crucial. And I can you elaborate on the tech stack for this?
Yes. In a nutshell, it's good, mostly just JavaScript based, and I think it's we'll say JavaScript and Node.js in particular. So if you want to make this yourself, you need to know. They give you, in this case, a lot of it, but I'll say the tech stack would be JavaScript, HTML, CSS, just general purpose web editing, and then the backend is Node.js. That's what communicates to the database, and then of course Forge services. And Forge services in this case is just they're agnostic. They say we'll give you the coding language in JavaScript for Node.js. Node.js is just JavaScript for backend. We'll give you PHP version of it. We'll give you the C# .NET version of it, and I think there was a fourth one I cannot remember, but they give you a bunch of different common coding languages for the development. It doesn't give you Python on the back end. In any case, you'd still need to have JavaScript on the front end, but it would work anyway. They just don't have anything for you. So what I use in particular, I can probably bring it up in the documentation real quick. If I scroll through lickety split, is this. So that's the tech stack: HTML, JavaScript, CSS, Node.js. You have to have these all kind of installed, ready to go in your computer. Pretty straightforward, but also Forge has to be there as Forge plus all this is the tech stack to make this work. And I should also mention you need a hosting account with Heroku or GitHub Pages or something like that to get it hosted. So that's and you get a sense of how this works here. It's the host with the authorization, with the information from the 360 and data management can then produce the app and the viewer. So that's kind of the diagram I have for the Forge app workflow.
Got it. And you had one diagram about like different APIs with Forge. Like, can you like talk about like what are the different things we could do?
And this is important because Forge on its own is like a stack of services. So just I can find that exact one. Here we go. So I'll give you the kind of the easier to read one. So Forge itself is not a API or a service. It's a collection of all the services that it's like a platform for all the APIs that Autodesk supports. And these are built on modern web frameworks. It's not something Autodesk can like just did it on their own. This is like, okay, let's just use whatever people are using right now and make these APIs available to everybody. And the APIs they're agnostic to language, meaning they just say, okay, here's how you would get information out of, say, anything on the cloud, we'll say BIM 360, and then feed it into an app. And an API, just to be clear, is an application programming interface, meaning the way they always describe this is it's a waiter. If your web page is the customer, the client at the table, and your web server and database are the kitchen, the API is the guy going back and forth between the database, takes the order from the customer, goes back to the kitchen, which is the database, gets what he needs from the kitchen database, and goes back to the web page. So that's what the APIs are for. So whether that's done in JavaScript, PHP, or whatever, it's all a matter of like, how do you want to get the requests? That information is built into these, and there's at least 8. There's more. They always release new ones. The main ones we use for the project you saw is data management API for all those charts, and the BIM 360 API to access the dashboard and the viewer. Everything else here, there's other design automation, for example, lets you just say, okay, BIM Forge services, I want you to modify all my Revit models. and as long as you have the code for that, you can push it to the cloud and say, okay, overnight, modify 100 web files. They charge you for that. That's not free because it's extra work, but you can actually tell it to do all this work. So that's what design automation helps you with. You can track your token, meaning your usage of Forge. That's what they use tokens. Reality capture, taking snapshots and using views from the field to work with the services. Model derivative takes different 3D formats like DWG, RVT, IFC, and then pushes it to the Forge viewers and information. There's also the Construction Cloud API, which is released. It's basically the bigger version of BIM 360 that connects to external services that are not necessarily Autodesk hosted. So there's a lot of APIs. You don't need all of them. I only really use 360 API, data management API, and we don't have it here, but also the authentication API, so I can actually log in. Those are the three main ones I use. Depending on your project, you might use like 2, 3 of these, or a lot of them, depending on what you're trying to achieve. You don't have to pick every one of them. They all do different things, and these are the real APIs. Forge Web Services are just a collection of them. So that's where you have to figure out, it's like, what are the APIs that I need? If you don't know, they have lots of great documentation on their website for those APIs, or you can literally just reach out to the Forge team, like, what is this? Help me, get on a call with me, 30 minutes. They will talk through everything. They'll even make custom apps where I'm like, guys, I don't know how to do this myself. Can you make something that can read data from the Forge, from my projects and spit it out in a certain way? And they said, we can, but we'll give you 90% of it, and the rest you have to kind of take from there, because it's like security and all that stuff at that point. So there's easy enough ways to learn all of this. Let's put it that way.
Got it. And in your app on front end, like we saw the charts and visualization. So ideally, if I am not wrong, we could integrate any JavaScript library in the front end for visualization or for any other features. So how does the information from that front end being queried into the Forge model or like the BIM data and being displayed here? Like how does that workflow happens?
It's given what they provided me, a lot of this is kind of like a copy paste job, but when it came, which is my recommendation, if you don't have to build everything yourself, as long as you know how to use the content available out there. Going back to, so a lot of this, the data itself was actually pretty simple. They have a built-in way of using charts. These, I believe, I'm getting it, was it chart.js? That's an open source, it's not Autodesk project. I think it's chart.js. I might be wrong, but it's an open source system they use. Open source means nobody owns it. Or I should put this, it's open for anybody. Somebody might have rights to it, but they don't charge you for using it. You can make your own version. The source code is available for you to just take it and modify however you like. Usually, almost the entire time it's free. Meaning like they're not going to charge you to use it, but they put some hey, thank you for chart.js or whoever for making this. Just throw a shout out. But it's open source, so Autodesk is not going to build everything themselves. They're going to build what they need to build for the Forge Web Service APIs. So the charts are made in chart.js, but you can connect to that. So going back to the document I have here, if I scroll down, the actual code to make all this work, the work sets and the materials you're seeing here, and all this other stuff is located here under public. We won't be able to get into the weeds of all this today because it'll be like a lot of stuff here. Under a setting for the code, and this is VS Code, the editor, there's a directory called public. Under that, there's the JavaScript, which makes everything work. Under that, there's dashboards. And that is where you put your charts. So I'll actually, let me see if I can show you here, actually, for dashboard JS, for example. This is on the GitHub, my GitHub, so you guys have everything I have. You have to change some things to avoid the security issue to host it on your platform. Basically, this is the dashboard.js code. At the vast majority of this, they're like, here you go. And all we had to do was modify some information to make sure, for example, we had the document loading the target and then says, create a new dashboard. And then in that dashboard, create a bar chart and a pie chart. Bar chart contains work set. Okay, new pie chart, material, new bar chart, category, new works, and then new pie chart, work set. And this is coming from let's see. Yeah, it doesn't tell me if it's chart.js, but this is referring to the chart.js system. So I'm going back here into the model, into the Forge viewer. That's all this is. That's where it comes from. It's those lines of code. It says generate these for me, and it just connects the data from one portion of the dashboard. So you just create, if, basically if we have stuff in here, if we have data, make these 4 charts. And I can literally just go copy this, put a new comma in there, and say, give me a new bar chart for, oh, I don't know, what would you visualize? Materials, work sets, columns. Just put whatever, it has to be a category in Revit. So it has to make sense. You can look this up in the API too. And whatever is in the API, you just put it in the comments, new chart. That's it. Simple as that. And you can just make 20 of them if you want. I stepped that 4 because I was like, well, you get the idea. But you can literally just keep going on and on, make new charts. This is the dashboard itself. So that's where the magic from the dashboard comes from. So most of this was provided to me by them, the Forge team. They're like, okay, here's what you need for the essentials. But this is the modifications we need to make for those charts on the right. I just had to figure out what I wanted to show. So I could change this to something else. I think it can be volumes, whatever is in the API says, yeah, you can show material, show work set, that's all fine. Just put that quote, the keywords are what you need to put down there. And the pie chart, bar chart comes from the chart.js. And these are my notes for it to make it work. So, and going back to how this is all structured, I think go here to the, let's see if it was VS Code. Let me make sure I get that right. Index.html, which looks like it's under public. So I have to go to public. Yeah, index. And it just shows up. This is what you're looking at on the website. And so it just lays out everything in a sort of format saying, okay, the bar chart's going to be, the bar chart is fixed to the left. And then the different, the Forge viewer right here is in the middle. And then the charts will be on the right. That's all this is. But then you feed that information to the charts back here. So a lot of this is pretty straightforward to put together when it comes to reading it. So it's easy to read their materials and content. And the Forge team, for everybody out there, go to Forge. This is my page. But if you go search for Forge, they have. Let's see if we can find. There's other Forges out there. Or I should say, let me real quick explore. Okay. GitHub, Autodesk, Forge. Always your friend Google platform here. They provide a ton of stuff. If you go to their repositories, this is everything. So you can use whatever PHP client, Node.js client, visualization. And if you go to something for Inventor, these are updated. You can see the timestamp November 8. Forge Digital Catalog, for example, you go in here, they give you everything. You can go ahead and copy this. And it says, here's what this is. This is what it does. This is what it looks like. Here's some instructions. They're really good about this. So a lot of it was built on what they had. And you could contact them. You can say, oh, hey, Bastian, can you talk to me? Whatever. They're pretty cool about talking to people, to everybody out there. So that's the magic behind it is really, and I have it highlighted in the PDF or the presentation I did, is, again, this is the magic. That's all the stuff I put, the source code I want to make the charts with. And the other one here, you don't see it here, but the visual cluster, if I go back to the model here, I can use, they said, okay, right now, you can do explode model in BIM 360 out of the box, but form clusters by categories is a nice visualization tool. I click on it. This right now is on 360 out of the box, but it's available through Forge. And it'll cluster every category of content, and then it'll line them up into different types and families for you, so you can visualize what's in your model. Kind of interesting way of looking at the model is kind of stacks everything: doors, mechanical equipment, framing, ceilings. It just stacks them up for you, and you can then check out what's in each of these with the properties information. This is just to help you kind of visualize what's in there. Could be useful if you're doing equipment review or whatever, just anything that applies to your model whatsoever. It just automatically lines it up. Now, if you go back to the presentation, it's the same thing as what we talked about when it came to the charts. Let's see if we can find it. So in this case, if that's a dashboard like the last time, another section of JS code, dashboard's a whole section. Outside of that is the Forge viewer, which controls the cluster, because that's a different thing. Dashboards are over here, Forge viewer is in the middle. The clusters, again, just put extensions. Give me the browser, give me the visual clusters. That's all you have to do to make that cluster work. I didn't have to do any extra work beyond this. Just tell it, hey, give me the visual clusters. Now, you may have to ask the Forge team, do you have something like this? And they may be like, oh yeah, we do. Just this is how you do it. It's already built into our API. This is all Forge API you're looking at here. I didn't add anything whatsoever to make that work beyond. Yeah, just tell it in the Forge viewer source code to put in the graphic user interface viewer, and the Forge viewer needs extensions for the document browser, as we see on the left there, all the projects, and then also the visual clusters. That's it. And as long as everything else is doing its job, it loads up perfectly. And that's how you get that. So those are the two things I did there. It was visual clusters one. You have the exploding stuff, which is kind of fun to do if you want to explode your model. And also the bar chart. So I was like, okay, this is a great way to communicate information to the team. And the goal was, okay, better user experience with data access 360. That's the whole point of this. Because right now, if you saw 360 right now, you have to select the project from a drop down, switch to the project. Select drop from project, switch to project. There was no global view of the project. So if PM wanted to just get some bulk data out of the project, some very generic, like maybe what's in the project, it's not easy with 360. It does a lot of great things. It doesn't make it easy to see your data, even though it's all there. So now I can give insights to the project team from the data they already put into this is the work they do every day. So now they can get data out of it in an easier breakdown charts. And it's internal operations, so we don't have to go buy something else, or at the very least, we could prototype this and see if there is a solution we want to purchase from an experienced developer who could give us a more robust system. And it's extensible. So we could just make a bigger version of this. It's extensible and scalable, so it's not going to be stuck here. If that works for my entire 360 stack of projects, we can expand upon that app to include user information, not just materials and work sets and all that, the user information, project team information, who's in the model when, just so we can see if there's a down period of all that for maintenance, that kind of thing. It's extensible. So that same app I made for prototyping, I can make it, put more stuff in there and continue developing it. So that's all this great stuff. And that's the value. You always think about what does I want to do? Because I know everybody here probably listening has interests in just having fun on their own. There's so many fun things you can do, just developing this on your own. It's cool stuff I've seen from different developers, even just on Forge alone. They did some crazy, just for fun, something you find cool. You can take that same approach if this is cool and just say, okay, where is the need operationally, cost effectiveness, gaps in the process that we can address doing something I'm doing anyway for my own kind of development. As long as you kind of put a case out there that I can save you X number of hours, or I can give you some useful information, people are responsive. They'll listen to you. They'll be interested in what you have to say, and they'll say, okay, let's talk. They're very open-minded. So try to find a way to figure out, what is my team doing? Because right now they have no insights in their models that we can really make it easy. Web can be very easy. We do everything on the web. So it's on the web. Great. We already put 360 on the web. I have that asset. And every company has that. Some companies are still doing everything on generic, server-based non-web version of Revit. I highly recommend everybody to just go into 360. It's worth any cost you have in there. But so for these reasons, now you have a central repository of all your projects. The app data you see here would only work if I had it on 360. Otherwise, there's a whole different approach. We'll be much more involved in this. But because everything's on 360 and Forge is like a nice little layer between the models and the web tools everybody uses, you can just easily extract information much faster. Couldn't do this on my own. I'd have to be an expert in visual software programming and have a team behind me make this without 360 or web Forge. So I had Forge. I had 360. We can use Forge. I knew there's a way we could address some shortcomings in data visualization that would be beneficial to a project manager, and we can get this kind of quick kind of breakdown of the charts, sorting out the content of the model. What else could we do? And we show the team, guys, is this easy for you to log in, find your project, and then see what's in the project and visualize it and get some data? And they're like, yes, but can we also do this? Or close, but I need this. That's how you evolve the next step. So that's how you get the value of doing something you want to do. This is all pretty cool to me. And then also providing something that the team can benefit from, that you can grow from there. It's a mutual relationship in that case. And you just have to start asking questions. It could take a year before you really have an answer. But that was my process for all this.
Yeah, and this is incredible. Especially I got excited with the visual clusters, and I thought it's a great way to maybe find outliers or maybe figure out modeling errors of categorization. And if we are optimizing some units, you could visually see what are the modular units we are replicating and how as there opportunities for optimization. And uh, If we can go back to that GitHub code of dashboard, uh, one thing I was uh, looking is like where is the data of the model being stored? So you showed us like how you created new charts, but how is the data been filled in those chart? Is there a global variable of Forge which is like feeding the data
So
in?
that's a good question, because in this case, we're looking at the viewer, the tree, which is like that, the branching stuff you see on the left there with all the projects, and the dashboard. So show me this is the front facing side of it.
Mhm.
So if I go a little deeper, the roots is where the data is. It's going to be data management.js. Unless it's not common, is it? Okay, that's authorization. So you need authorization, but basically this is where the data is coming from. It's like, okay, now that if I authorize you to access my projects per a user, this is how we can get the data. And this is where it is, the data management based on, yes, that's right, the data management API we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
So it's a data management API, and then therefore, if I go back to the document here, data management.js, and that's a name. You can, but you want to make sure your names are consistent. I always follow whatever they gave me as far as the routes. This is routes to the back end to get the data management API, and I'll give you everything you need. So that's where you get the information from your project. And without getting too much in the weeds here, this is kind of a breakdown of all the project IDs and folders and items, parameters, mapping, and all that client information. And this is where the data is being extracted from, for the most part. It's so that's where it's coming from, and then it's feeding into a different path in that same structure to the front end, which is visuals of the dashboards. So this is where it's tapping in through the Forge API, the essentials of, like, assuming again your project data is there. It's like, give me project ID, and then from there I'll grab the information you need. So okay, now I recognize your project, I know what it is. Then from the data dashboard you saw earlier, you can then say, okay, give me this information from these projects on this front page. And it takes a little bit of time to learn. It's this, I believe, I can't tell if, so yeah, Forge, I wrote that here. Forge, roots for the Forge data management API. The code receives a request from the user interface tree. It's like pushes out the APIs. That's the client saying, hey, give me this. The waiter API goes to the backend kitchen. This is the kitchen. The ID parameter indicates the node that is being expanded. After that, it contains the href of the resources. Therefore, when expanding one hub, an endpoint should return the projects from the hub. That just means you'll focus on the one project. So yeah, you need to know Node.js to really understand this, but it's not like super complicated. So if you already know JavaScript, Node.js is just a format to use JavaScript for a backend without having to break your fingers typing. It has a lot of, like, it's basically like, it makes, just like Forge makes it easier to do your stuff with Revit on cloud, Node.js makes it easier to do your backend work with JavaScript. You could also use Python. This could all be written in Python, PHP, Java, other languages. It makes sense to use one language here, but this is all Node.js version of Java. This is JavaScript Node.js you're looking at. So once you learn a little bit about the nomenclature here, you can start like modifying it. Will it break? Will it have bugs? Will it get frustrated? Yes. But that's how you learn this stuff. So that's where the data comes from. 154 lines of code, which sounds like a lot, but it's not that bad. And most of this was out of the box. We just had to modify a few things per my project. So they actually gave me the vast majority of the work I needed to succeed, because this is a pretty straightforward project. And you could just do the same thing with their existing projects. Any of these, like this one, this is like the same thing. You just see here everything they have and contact the team. It's like they updated it pretty recently, a few months ago, and you'll say all the stuff you need in there, and so on and so forth. We're going to do, but they basically give you the code and you just modify it. The main thing is modify the authorization so you have the right authorization. Otherwise, it'll just go to some null directory and you won't see anything, even if your code's perfect. So authorization is actually the tricky part here. So I reached out to the Forge teams, like, how do I authorize this? Because it is a weird process, to be honest. It's a three-legged authorization. We won't get into any of that, but it's a weird process. I highly recommend you reach out to them about the authorization, because you have to say, okay, here's a token, client ID, log in this. It's a process. So definitely reach out to them to get that information. They have tutorials, but I'd always just contact them. They're very much open to you reaching out to them on Stack Overflow, on the Forge website. Just, hey, help me. and they'll hold your hand through all this, and they'll explain everything that you need to know. And from there, they just want you to use their platform, and they're very supportive of however you want to do it with whatever app. People have literally taken these kind of models that we see in the dashboard viewer, take this kind of format, and they'll make something where you can load in the web browser content, and then you can actually model a whole room or whatever in the web browser. And I believe you can then take that and push it into Revit, which is very cool. I've seen examples like that. So you can do kind of whatever, and they can definitely help you connect the dots. Make sure you get the right resource. And they see a cool project, they put it on their website, on the Forge website. Hey, check out somebody's cool solution. So not as bad as you think. It takes time to learn this, but I didn't know anything. And like about 2 years ago, I didn't know diddly squat about JavaScript, and I can at least read through the documentation. I can say, okay, I don't know what that means. I think I understand what that means. Let me try it out. I'm at that point. So don't feel like you have to be some expert to do this stuff. People hold your hand all the time. They want you to succeed with their services. So yeah, don't be intimidated by lines of code. That's just part of it. If you're already comfortable doing anything else in this world of design technology, you'll be a natural at doing this too.
Got it. And I'm thinking about like, what if someone wants to do, let's say, clustering or visualization or some data analytics outside this platform on like basic Python script or Jupyter script. So how would you deal with that? Is there like an export option of which has those quantity?
There is a way you can say you want to avoid, you just want to skip this whole thing and just export it. There's multiple ways of doing that. And I would recommend this actually. You can probably, I asked this question specifically. You can, to the Forge team and say, yeah, we can provide you ways of extracting parameter ID data project by project, and even version of it. And then you could take that information, extract it with a Forge tool, and then push that into something else that's Python based. You still have to extract the data one way or the other. That could be a third-party tool or a developer in Forge who already did this work for you, you just buy it, or it's free or whatever, you install it from Forge, or it's a third-party service for BIM 360 or Revit, you can extract it that way. Let's say you don't care about Forge or BIM 360, you just do it from Revit. Let's go with that. So let's say purely Revit, you can, as long as you have the parameter ID information you can get out of Revit through, say, whatever, PyRevit or something like that, you can extract that and push it into something like Jupyter Notebook with Python. But if you're talking about, so that's one without even looking at 360. But let's say you want to do something like this where you get the global data from all the projects, I would recommend trying to use the Forge platform and reaching out to the development team. That's why I did. It's like, hey, is there a way we can get this data out of the model, parameter data, and then I could take that parameter data per project and then use that and with the sets and all this stuff and push it to Python. It's a bit of a pipeline, but I would say you probably do want to use the Forge APIs to make that easy. And then even if you don't want to use Forge to do the analysis, you still want to use Forge to extract that information. There might be something out there already. Again, these pages right here might have on the Forge pages here, they might have something in there, or you can contact them to ask them if they have something. Just give me a dump of data from 360, and then you could take that, as long as you know what you want and it's structured correctly in a way you can use it, that's on you to figure out. Then you can put it into Python Jupyter notebooks and you can study the model there. So there's multiple ways of doing that. I recommend starting with Forge. It's kind of like, it's almost like, what are you comfortable with? What are you able to do? What's your resources? And that'll give you a sense. It's all possible. Either just avoiding 360 and Forge altogether, or using it to get the data out there. So it can definitely just be used for data extraction, if nothing else. Dump it into, say, depends, XML file, something like that. And then you can take the XML, put it into Jupyter Notebook and with pandas and further modify it from there. So that's a bit of a pipeline, but it'll work. Yeah.
Got it. And I have a few non-technical questions to wrap up the interview. So is there anything else you wanted to cover on from the presentation or the code side before we do that?
I'll just say that start with the Forge tutorial that they have. I forgot, let me just see if I can find it real quick. Autodesk Learning Forge. I don't know if I can find it, but if you guys, anybody's interested, here we go. Just go to this website here. Most of the stuff you saw my project starts from here. It's a very straightforward kind of like easy to learn approach. So this specific page, learnforge.io, great starting place. You may have to reach out to the team to ask questions, but if you go to support on, you can actually contact them through the support page here directly, and they will get back to you. You don't have to be a customer. They will get back to you. You can email us, ask on Stack. Here's the documentation. Here's the blog. Here's the GitHub. It's all there. They'll help you with everything. So if you guys are interested, anybody's interested, just go here. Go here and start learning. It'll give you, say, before you start, it'll give you everything you need to know, and then it'll say just next. Here's your tools. Pick so Node.js, .NET, .NET Core, Go, PHP, Java. If you know just JavaScript, Node.js. The other ones are also possible. No Python support at this point, but it might come up, or you can just figure it out yourself if you know it well enough. And you'll just say, okay, let's do authentication. So they'll hold your hand and lead you through. If you have any questions, like, help me forward your team, and just go email. So leave it there for anybody who's interested in learning more about the platform. It's not a bad start. You may have a lot of questions, but trust me, this is always a ton of questions in this world, so don't be afraid.
Yeah, like, thanks a lot for sharing these resources. From your experience as a design technologist, what is your piece of advice for technologists in AEC, and how should they navigate this space to create an impact in their firms?
There's a couple of approaches to that. It's a really good question, and I would say there's the different approaches. First of all, focus on making connections with people. I think we tend to be siloed off. We kind of get this feeling, if you're like me when I was going through this career, was, oh, this Tadeh here, you're here, we're good at what we do. You guys figure it out. Let us know. And you kind of get this feeling, okay, I won't bother anybody. I'll just go off to the corner and do my work, and they'll see my results. They appreciate that, but you should also just reach out and say, hey guys, what's going on? What's the problems on your project? Can I get involved in some of these meetings for coordination? Can you tell me what's happening on the business level? They reach out to accounting, reach out to the executive staff, reach out to operations, anybody in quality control, the team people who are actually modeling things and documenting. Talk to them. Don't be afraid of networking internally. I think I learned that lesson a little late, and now I'm doing a lot more of that, is networking internally, because that's how you learn where the problems are. That's where you can make the biggest impact. The reason this whole field even exists is to make a solution for day-to-day workflows. Otherwise, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't need it, right? So there's like, okay, this is getting complicated. There's too many data sources, too much documentation, and somebody in the design technology sphere is going to help them on the one hand build what they need to build, model what they need to model, create the right kind of information, and also comprehensively deliver that. So you need to talk to everybody, because my current role as program manager, I work across departments to make our solutions work. Otherwise, I have nothing to work with. So it's up to you to be networking internally. That's how you learn a lot of value, and then people know what you're capable of. Everybody knows what the accountant and finance can do. Everybody knows what somebody as a, say, project engineer or project architect, they know what that guy does. No one knows what you do. That's been an experience in design technology in general for any field. They don't know what you do. So reach out to them, say hi, introduce yourself, and explain what you do a little bit and where they stand. Maybe have a conversation over time, buy a lunch or something like that. Just go talk to them. That is extremely, extremely helpful for anybody in any field. I highly recommend anybody who's interested in pursuing this path to do so, because you're never going to know everything until you reach out and talk to people, and they're like, oh, I wish I talked to you 6 months ago. This would have solved a lot of problems I've talked to you 6 months ago, a year ago. That's the first thing. That's just communication. It helps a lot. Second, if you're going to continue working, let's say, speaking of design technology, broaden your horizons and try to step beyond the software you're comfortable with, operations. I know sometimes people are just Grasshopper and Rhino freaks and they hate Revit. I mean, that's fun to have that kind of, fanboy battle, but really think about what you're trying to solve. Like, okay, where's the data in Rhino and Revit and SketchUp, wherever, and all the other sources, where are they coming from? Think about globally what everything's doing on their own, together, whatever, and say, what is important here? What's the workflow? Is it like just messed up kludge of a bunch of stuff coming together in an awkward way that produces limited results? You have to really think globally, like, what am I trying to achieve, and where's the data, and how can I bring that together? Have that approach. Don't be so much stuck in the corner. Like, this is the only one way. I have my preferences, but I always back up why I have those preferences. And if somebody wants to include something that I might not be 100% interested in, we have a discussion. We talk about the pros and cons and we work for it. But I don't just, stick to what I have. Otherwise, I would never grow out of the Revit box. Right now, I'm like, going outside of the digital twins and lifecycle models that are much bigger than any BIM system. It includes sensors in a built environment, project controls, it's equipment, right? So that was my growth. Be open-minded, think about where your data source is coming, map it out, just be a good communicator in that regard and have an open mind. And also, on a very practical day-to-day level, I would say, like I talked about earlier, the technology is really moving to the web. I found that I really noticed that a couple of years ago, and I recommend everybody to, if they want to learn more about this stuff, go to your either virtual or in-person meetups for any tech group in your area, whether it's Android development, iOS, data scientists, web developers, blockchain, cryptocurrency guys. Go to their meetups, just learn. They show you what the technology looks like. You'll learn a lot that way. That is the future. Everything is moving to web. Web 3.0 is coming up, and that's going to be, maybe that'll be 10 years in the making. We don't know. It just started. But they're talking blockchain backend instead of what we have now, which is like, Node.js, for example, and databases and all that. We'll see. Learn about that, because if you're interested in the space of design technology, that's going to come to you, because you're going to need to do what I was doing, which is get more involved in the data side of things, the analysis side of things. And that's going to be not only, even if you're not going to become an expert developer, right? The more you know about it, the more you understand how it works, the easier it'll be for you to communicate to, say, a dedicated developer staff and the team you're working with, so that you have this kind of middle ground at the very least. But I highly recommend everybody, if they're really interested, how can I level up my skills? How can I be more value? What's my opportunities? I would say it's anything whatsoever in the web space, front end, back end, full stack, blockchain, apps. Figure out something. It might take you a month, a year, 2 years. It took me 4 or 5 years to figure this out. So don't be stressed out that it's going to take time. You have plenty of time, especially if you're just starting a career. I've done this for 10 years. The time just flew by. So don't worry about that so much. That's where the world's going, is everything is just electrons in the air, digital space. So focus on that on a practical level. BIM is great. VDC is great. Design technology is great, but don't get stuck in these low platforms where you can only really work in what you have. How do you connect it to the web? How do you bring it back to your project from the web? Start with that approach. You'll get very interesting results. You'll be very surprised what you can accomplish, even like a prototype stage, like what I made. And just keep going. In a year, you might be very knowledgeable. In 2 years, you might be developing things. In 3 years, you might be a very good, developer off the cuff, making things real quick. 4 or 5 years, you might be a senior developer, and you're the guy to go to in the whole company for making the best version of the current project visible to the team. They go to you for that kind of valuable insights. That's what I'm trying to get at here. I worked for me on the BIM kind of level up. Like I described earlier, I went from I used it for very basic modeling and get some analytical results, to giant projects where I had to go from cradle to grave with the project on not just BIM but also the data and deliverables for the facility management. And now we're talking digital twins, and that was all kind of evolution of my internal interest over a period of time. So I think the same thing's happening right now, but I would say focus on the web and connecting that to everything. You'll be surprised what you can. I highly recommend that. But so communicate, get out of your little corner, communicate to everybody, be a networker, get used to that. Don't be so possessive of whatever you're working on. Just be open-minded and try pick things out, and web technologies in general will be your friend. So those are the 3 things that I recommend to anybody.
That's a great piece of advice. And sometimes we see friction from the field when they want to learn new tools, or when they want to adopt new technology. So what are some tips and tricks from your experience you like to share?
People like when things are fast and easy. So if you can show them this is fast and easy compared to what you've been doing, and that's a solution. So figure out what the solution is there. You have to go talk to them or ask somebody who knows them to talk. Hey, what are they trying to do? Can I help them? And that's how you can find ways to support them. And also not just kind of, here, do it. You take this as the solution. I'll say, hey guys, so what do you think? I heard you have a problem with whatever concrete quantities for your pores in the field. How about we use our models to help you with that? And they may not know, they may be the guys scheduling that and organizing that, but they don't know how to use any of the software. I'm like, oh, cool, thank you for the schedule. What do we do with this now? What if we have to change this? It's like, okay, what if there's a way we can, and you talk to them, do a little survey here, 15-minute call, fill out forms. Okay, so is this useful? They say, oh, this is really great. So is there a way we can update this over time? It's like, yes, it's not that hard. Do we have anybody who can update it on the concrete quantities, say in the model? What can you do there? It's like, give me somebody maybe I could show them the very, very simple steps here. Concrete's pretty easy in Revit, for example, if you do Revit, or you can even Rhino if that makes sense, whatever you guys are using. And say, hey, how can I make this work? And you have this conversation. It's like, you have a problem, I have a solution. What do you think of the solution? What's the next step? Go from there. Because people just want solutions that most of the time. They may not be as fascinated in the design technology sphere as you are, but they appreciate the possibilities there. So they may not understand why you're bringing up what you're bringing up. They say, hey, this thing is going to solve this problem. That's a great way to format it. And you have to make it very easy and digestible for them. And from there, it's like, okay, high level, this is what it can do. They'll give you better quantities. Do you want to learn more? And you dive into the deeper and deeper stuff. So there's, okay, then you start making it work. So, but again, communicate first, learn what's going on out there. So I say, if you want to help people out there resistant, tell them, like, if they're really resistant, say, hey guys, I can save you X percentage of hours. If you can either use those hours and waste them like you have been, or I can save you 10% of your time on this specific task. Is that valuable to you? Let's say it takes whatever, 4 hours at a quantity count the way they've been doing. So what if I give reduced to 1 hour? And let's say we're doing this every other week. So I bring it down to from about 100 hours of time you spend in a year on this to about 25, 26 hours in that schedule. You break it, something simple, just to really quickly figure out the math there. Just quantify, hey, I could save you 75 hours a year. Is that money to you? That's 2 weeks full-time pay for somebody. Is that money to you? That they usually understand money from nothing else. That's another way to back up the argument. I could save you full-time 2 weeks of work here. What do you think? And they're like, oh, okay, well, show me. Yeah, those are different ways. Quantify it, but also, kind of spoon feed it to them and just have a high-level conversation. So solve problems.
Got it. And I'm curious to know your thoughts about what are some opportunities in Web3, blockchain, or metaverse for AEC?
I've already seen that applied to different projects I worked on. For example, at HKS, we did the SoFi Stadium for the Rams. That's the big one in LA. That project used blockchain to authorize the construction documents in a fast manner. Otherwise, you'd have, like, I don't know, thousands of sheets that need to be signed, stamped. That's not, that'll take forever. So they use blockchain to help on the one hand expedite that, but also authorize it in a controlled fashion. So I think just like that, it's like, how can we agree? How do we all agree that is a serious issue in just any kind of project management, especially in the built world? Like, how do I know the architect, engineer, planner, planning department, contractor, everybody, finance, whoever's doing finance? How do we know this is? We all looked at it, we all checked it off, and everybody's doing it a little bit different. So if you had something in Web3 and blockchain that says, okay, here's all the documents, can you just stamp using blockchain, where the ledger says everybody on the chain of the project saw it and it's public, and we all agree this is the current version, that'll save you a ton of time and coordination alone. So you're not trying to jump back and forth trying to make sure that everybody see it, or we left out this one guy, or at this stage of the project we had to get approval from some department. That kind of thing can be a huge benefit when it comes to making sure everything's aligned, updated. That's just one example. And from there, it's kind of, you use your imagination beyond that, because the blockchain can solve a lot of that kind of community. That's called community, more than just one team. That can say, okay, that's the transparency on this. Let's make it fast and efficient. And there's authority with the blockchain. I have my ledger, I have my portal into it. Nobody else has it. Just like a stamp, I have my stamp. Nobody else should use it. So if you're the project architect, Billy Joe, and you are the one authorizing the document, hey, Billy Joe went to blockchain, authorized it. Next guy does it. Next guy does it from whatever who else have to authorize it. And we like, okay, well, y'all agree on this, and we all get updates on the agreements. That alone would be so beneficial. We can avoid any kind of wet signature, printing out stuff, signing it, avoid destroying some trees, and also just expedites everything substantially. That can be used for signing things off, comments. That alone would be a big deal. It could evolve from there. Like, think about how Dropbox 10 years ago, just for sharing, file sharing. Now we have BIM 360 for project coordination as a accommodated environment, so we can do all the work there. It evolves. So it could start from a very basic premise that is useful for everybody, and then it just grows into something much more comprehensive that solves a lot of problems over time as people get more and more buy-in. The technology becomes more robust, cheaper, all that stuff. So that's one example that I saw used on a project. I think would be very valuable in just about any project. assuming we don't have this giant lag that we always have in the AEC world, that people seem to they're getting better, but yeah, depending on where you live and what you do, there's a lag. But again, people want just that. The blockchain signing off documents saves a lot of money. You don't have to like waste time on, hey, let me print this, go here, let me put a PDF. Oh, I gotta do another PDF. He didn't sign. Many hours combined can be saved just on that. So that's one example that can evolve to a bigger picture that I've seen used already.
Got it. And also, like I feel like the feedback loop in AC is like has a different time scale. Like sometimes it takes a lot. And any thoughts how we can reduce the time for the feedback loop, or how we can get faster?
Couple of ways. I would say one thing is just to bring it up to the high level decision maker, so you don't have to talk to everybody at once. So say, hey, guys, how is a good way we can communicate with? Let's say, depends if you have that access, but that's the relationship you have to develop over time. Is like, how can I access the executives who provide direction to the entire organization, and ask them, hey, what's a great way to communicate what we're doing operationally in the design technology world with all the project teams and our partners? Is there some starting point? That's one way of doing it. And you have to find a format there. That's HMC. That was kind of there when I got there. There was already a discussion of like, how can we make this better? And HMC was already moving in the direction of more data, more analysis, better feedback for the owners after we deliver the project. And you have to say, hey, like, that's why I say it's like, start with like what's on the table right now. At Panko, it was concrete. They were trying to do a lot more concrete work that was profitable for them. They had a 5-year plan at the time for expanding the concrete to something like 20% more work in concrete. I'm like, hey, cool. Now I know. So let me go see if there's a way I can work with them on the concrete scope. But usually companies these days, if they don't, they should by now. Bigger scale companies, doesn't have to be huge, but big enough they can have business planning like that. They have a strategy, and you just, hey, reach out to them. What's your strategy? Let me know more about this strategy. And then that's a great way to plug in and say, hey, what's a good way to help me facilitate your strategy or build one with you? I think this would be a value. And one way to get kind of feedback is just after you establish that kind of like working relationship and you know where to start is surveys. I know some companies do actual like, survey monkey surveys or forum surveys where you're just like, how did this work for you? How do you like it? Comments, 5-star rating, 4-star rating out of 5, whatever. And you push that out to the entire project team, again, with coordination with whoever's in charge of the project, so you don't just dump a bunch of work on them, and say, how do you guys like this? And that's how you get feedback. It's as simple as that. That's how they do it for software products. That's how they do it for shopping experiences at like stores. That's how you can do it too. Just simple, low impact, 30 seconds, please fill this out survey. And that gives you a lot of data real quick. It's like, I like it, I don't like it, and this is why. Even if it's a small sample, it's something more than just you're getting impressions. People tell you on chats or something. Oh, this is cool. So surveys are easy way of doing it. And the bigger picture is just making sure you have a strategy you can plug into or develop with the bigger picture operations.
Got it. I'm gonna wrap up this interview with a rapid fire questions. You'll have 5-10 seconds to answer it, and you got to make it brief. So first one is, which city is in your travel bucket list?
Travel bucket list would be at this point Washington, D.C., Amsterdam, Tokyo, maybe Sydney.
I see. Any technical or business book which made a big impact in your life?
Technical business book which made big. Yes, I cannot think of the exact book, but I highly recommend anybody who's interested in any thought process whatsoever beyond just technical books is read some philosophy by Plato and Socrates. That's a good starting point for kind of a baseline. If you guys have questions about that, you can talk offline about that. But that was my best technical book is philosophy.
Yeah. Who's your role model?
A little bit of Gandhi, a little bit of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I know it's a bit of a weird, dichotomy there, but those are guys who are both role models for a lot of the things I did in my life.
I see. Your favorite architecture building?
Favorite architect, that's a tricky one. I'm thinking real hard about this one. Darn, I'm losing. I cannot answer the question off that. I will go with the so bad. Hold on, I'll give you a few more seconds. I'm blanking out so bad here. I'm blanking out. Mies van der Rohe is a good one, put that way. I like a lot of his buildings because he designed that stuff in the 1930s and 20s as a glass skyscraper. So he's one of my faves, along with Walter Gropius. I'm blanking on all the buildings I ever did, but those two, Walter Gropius and Mies van der Rohe from the German School of Thought and Architecture, I was always pretty impressed by what they did on the modern level back in like 100 years ago.
Yeah. Any movie which motivated you?
Movie that motivated me. I always, nothing's more motivating than a Rocky movie. You gotta love that music he plays in the background. He's always just, yelling Adrian and trying to win the fight. So that's just motivation in general. It's always fun to watch those.
Good. And lastly, any ideas or development you wish you would work if you had unlimited time and resources?
He has unlimited time and resources. That's a great one. Probably really build out a scope for a true digital twin, as like for my body. Like there's buildings we're talking about. That'd be really cool if I do something like that. For right now, that's my digital twin. Everybody who has a smartwatch has a digital twin of their heartbeat and other sensor data. So I want to build a full digital twin of my body stats with some basic equipment. You don't have to wear a whole suit or nothing. Just some sensors, and I could see everything in my body from end to end. That'd be a great health device. That'll also be on my mind. Just talking about the data we worked on. Same concept, just different application.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Tadeh, for this amazing interview and sharing your work and thoughts with us. I had a great time.
Same here. This is a great talk. I know Mayur and everyone on this call, you guys are doing some great stuff. The next generation of taking the next level of everything in the design technology world. So I'm always eager to talk and help and communicate in any way possible. So I expect to see big things from all you guys in years to come. So yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here and just chat. It was fun.
Awesome. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye.